Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Startup Pitch. And today on the hot seat, we have Carlos Diaz, the co-founder and general partner of the Refiners.
Hi.
So Carlos, what is the Refiners?
Yeah, so people used to define us like an accelerator. We don't like this term. So we more like a seed fund with a program, because we believe that a fund should have a program, because we want to provide not only money but also some feedback, advice to entrepreneurs so that they can really be successful. We are very special because we only accept foreign funders. So what we're looking for is world-class entrepreneurs all around the world, and try to help them to come here to Silicon Valley.
And you're based here in San Francisco?
Yes, we're based here in San Francisco.
How big is the team?
It's a very small team. We're just 5 people, 3 partners. 1 person is in charge of investor relationship, and we have a program manager also. It's a 3-month program, so it's pretty intense. The team is 5 people, but there is something like 150 people involved in the program. A lot of mentors, a lot of masterclass, a lot of investors that come to meet with our startups. Team is small, but the network is big.
So that's a network of mentors, of professionals are in many different areas. Tell us more about it.
So basically, if you want to help foreign funders to come to Silicon Valley, they have very specific challenges. The first one would be
I guess the accent.
Yeah, the accent is one, but mainly the cultural gap is huge. I mean, we believe that there is more difference in between Europe and Silicon Valley than there is in between Europe and Japan. When you go to Japan, you understand right away that it's not your country, that everything is different, that you have to adapt. When you arrive here, when you're from Europe, for example, and you arrive here in Silicon Valley, it looks kind of the same, even if everything is different. So one thing we're trying to do with the Refiners is try to teach you what this cultural difference and how the Silicon Valley works, what are the rules of the game, and give you also the playbook so you can be successful here. So it's really a cultural clash, because we don't have a lot of time. So it took me years, to understand that, and we tried to do that and accelerate, this process in just a few weeks.
So tell us some of these differences that you've seen, over the years, and yourself as an entrepreneur, but also in the classes that you teach with the Refiners.
So, just to give you an example, if you ask the question to a European entrepreneur of what is he doing, in 90% of the cases, he's going to answer with his product. It's basically, this is my product, this is what my product is doing, this is the feature of my product, blah, 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 product. And I think it's because people in Europe are we are really a country of engineers, and we're very driven, by the technology. If you ask the same question to a successful entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley, the answer would be very, very different. He's going to say, okay, this is the problem I want to solve. This is why this problem is a big problem. It's not only a problem for me, it's a problem for the entire planet. So basically the market opportunity, this is how big is the market opportunity. This is my solution, and my solution is not better, it's totally different. I've got a disruptive approach, with my solution in comparison with others. And this is why me and my team, we are the best ones, to disrupt this situation and to bring, this solution to life. If you think about that, I never talk about the product. I talk about the problem, I talk about the market opportunity, I talk about how different I am, I talk about, why me, I talk about the team, but I never talk about the technology and the product. And by the way, nobody cares about the product. And a lot of people coming from Europe here, believe that Silicon Valley is really about product. It's ridiculous, to think that, because it would be like saying Hollywood is only about movies. Hollywood is about business, and Silicon Valley is about business the same. So I think that Silicon Valley works exactly the same than Hollywood. Change, the word movie by startup, and change the word producer by VCs, and you got exactly the same ecosystem and doing exactly the same thing. Now, Is Hollywood making the best movies on earth? I think no, but they are the most successful. So it's blockbusters, it's movies not only for American people, but it's movies for the entire planet. So most of the time the problem in Europe is that we build startups only for local business, like we're doing movies. If you watch, French movie, it's for French people, French stories. So here you're building stories, for the entire planet. You're building startup for the entire planet. This is not something we're used to, and so it's very important to change your mindset, and it's brutal, and that's something they discover here most of the time.
So how long? So you mentioned the program's 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
How many startups do you select, and what are sort of the different classes that you give?
So in 1 year we received something like more than 1,000 application. We only picked 25 startups in a year. So we're pretty picky. We're looking for world-class entrepreneurs that solve big problems and global problems with technology. We only are looking for digital tech startups because that's what we know about. We don't know anything about biotech. And we're not saying that it's not interesting, but us and our network is not expert, in this area, so that's not what we...
but software,
hardware, IoT, artificial intelligence, of course, blockchain is something very interesting, for us, right now. Entertainment, media, everything that is tech and digital is interesting, for us. So how the program works, so we only pick 12, 15 startups per program, so we have 2 programs
so
a
per
year.
batch.
Yep. Well, we call that fleet because we define ourselves like an invasion program. So it's a fleet of startups from abroad, what is pretty brave, right now with the government in place, to do. But that's what we're doing. We bring, foreigners to Silicon Valley. And I think it's important, for the Silicon Valley because 50% of the co-founders, in Silicon Valley are not born in the US. So these international founders are at the core of the success, of Silicon Valley. The Silicon Valley has been built, through this immigration and through this generation of brave entrepreneurs coming from abroad, trying to do something here, trying to conquer, like the Everest, because it's the pinnacle of technology here. It's a little bit harder, right now, but there is still, this generation of global entrepreneurs that want to come here, to conquer Silicon Valley because they don't see Silicon Valley as the US. They really see Silicon Valley as the capital of the world, in terms of technology. So yes, 12, 15 startups per fleet every 6 months, so 2 programs a year. We invest, so we're not consultant. We invest $50,000 to $100,000 in each startup we take in the program. We take equity, of course.
What's the equity?
3 to 6% on average. And yes, so this.
And you train them. It's all free.
So free for the startups.
Right.
There is a startup. There is a program fee that they pay, but it's much less than what we invest, of course. So the first part of the program is really about this reset, try to reboot the mindset of these entrepreneurs, because most of the time they've been living under the cloud. So we need to show them that the sky is a limit. So pump them up, or make them understand that they need to be more ambitious. That's also one of the difference, we see in between European funders and Silicon Valley funders, is that they really see, the world as the playground and not limit their vision only to Paris, for example, if they're French. So that's, and also make them understand that everything they know or they think they know about Silicon Valley is wrong. that it's a very specific environment with a specific culture and code, and they need to understand, how it works here if they want to be successful. So that's the first part of the program. The way we do that, we're not a school, we're not an academy. We bring people, very talented people from Silicon Valley. We're lucky to have people like Reid Hoffman, for example, or Phil Libin, or Rick Marini, or we had Leah Bousquet from TaskRabbit, came, to explain that.
Very high profile.
Very high profile, very successful, entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley that are going to tell them how Silicon Valley works, and so they understand what separates them, from what's going on here. It's kind of brutal. So that's the first stage of the program, and they come up, with new conviction or reinforce their initial conviction or new assumptions. Then the second part of the program is what we call mentor madness. So we bring three times a week, 8 mentors in-house, and they spend half an hour with each of them. Down the road, they're going to meet with 100 mentors in the 2 months. So it's a way, because again, Silicon Valley is like Hollywood. It's not the best actors in the best movies. It's the actors with the best agents. So you need to make connection, create your own network.
And you're the agent.
We are the agents, so we introduce them to 100 of people so they can start building. So first of all, it's a way to get feedback, for them, on their project, but it's also a way for them to create their first network of people here in Silicon Valley. And so that's the second stage of the program. They are friends, they're mentors, they're people like from our network, from our community. And we have something like 400 mentors, that we work with. And the third thing is, the third stage of the program is to give them access to US investors. They're part of our network. I do not consider them like friends. They're really clients. So it's money time. So you're gonna meet with, we have 30 investor fireside chats. So,
and you're bringing them deal flow.
Yeah, we bring them deal flow. Yeah. They're also kind of mentors. They like to come because they like to see. They don't have access, to these funders, from abroad. Usually, they don't have operation in Europe. We mainly based in Europe, for our deal flow is from Europe essentially. So they don't have access, to these funders. So they're very happy to come to see. They know that something is going on in Europe. So they're very curious. They're very interested in meeting with these entrepreneurs. And they know that we've prepared them culturally. So basically, they're from Europe, but they look like Silicon Valley startups. So there is kind of a cultural common ground so they can work together. There is a lot of programs that brings people here, and they haven't done this work, this cultural
reset or
brainwash
or
whatever you want to call it. And then the difference is so obvious that nothing can happen. So if you want to thrive in a country, you need to embrace, the culture.
Yeah, totally. So, do you think you need these entrepreneurs, those founders? Do they need to come to Silicon Valley to be successful? We've seen some very successful companies. The usual ones, the Skype, the Spotify.
They all came to Silicon Valley at some point. I think it depends what you're doing. You can run a startup with a local business, and that's totally fine. If your market is local, look at Vente Privée, for example, in France.
So what do they do?
They do like flash sales, and private sales. Their value proposition is very tailored to the French market because there is a very specific regulation and regulation of these sales, in France, and they found a solution, to that is very, very effective, and they're doing $1 billion revenue, only in France. So it's a very local business and very limited, to France and maybe a little bit Europe, but very, very specific to a location. Now, look at, for example, you mentioned a startup like Spotify or Skype or Criteo or, I don't know, Zendesk, a very good example. They are European startups. They wanted to create a global business. And what is very interesting with Spotify, for example, I've shared my office with the founders of Spotify in 2010. So I've seen them arriving here in Silicon Valley at the very beginning. I was very amazed. First of all, they started exactly the same time than Deezer, for example, in France. And Deezer was very focused on the French market, trying to make deals with the SACEM, et cetera, et cetera. The guys from Spotify were here. They were struggling. It was very difficult. They were coming from Sweden. Nobody really wanted to talk with them, but they were trying to do a business and create a global culture from day one. If you ask the question on the street, about Spotify to American people, they strongly believe that they are a startup, from US. They don't know they come from Sweden. They don't know there is 1,500 engineers working at Spotify in Stockholm. And by the way, nobody gives a shit. I mean, nobody cares of that. We don't care. It's a global startup. So I think that Europe, if we want to be a startup nation, if that's a plan, we need to build companies like this. So we need to think.
So they need to come to Silicon Valley?
Yes, why? Because if you take Paris, you take France. If you take London, you take England. If you take San Francisco, you take the world. In the tech space, I'm talking. If you're selling purses, that's not true. But if you're doing technology, this is what it is. It's very important, if we want to be ambitious, to be where the game is. We need to play Champions League. We should not stay in our national league. You don't want to be a big fish in a little pond.
So how big is the fund today, and what's coming next? Are you looking fundraising and?
It's a very good question. First of all, we are entrepreneurs. We're not investors. We created a fund with our money and with friends' money. We're lucky to have successful entrepreneurs as friends that really help us a lot, to create these, what we call it, beta fund. So it's more like a proof of concept. So I think we proved the concept. We built a brand that is now a little bit known. We've got a deal flow. We've learned a lot also during the last year about what is it to source, startups and help them here in Silicon Valley. So what's next, right now is find a business model.
The size of the fund.
It's $7 million, so it's very pocket money, for now. So, but it was just to learn again and try to make the case. Now we made the case. We're going to raise a bigger fund. I think that
when is that?
We're going to start, raising next year. We still have money, so we can still do 30 to 40 startups, and we're going to finish, the first fund. But we're going to start, raising a fund too. We believe that I'm not sure there is a business model on the service side, because we're not trying to make money, with startups. I think that taking money to startups is like taking candies, from kids. So you should not, try to make money, with startups. It's a kind of a red line you should not cross.
But then you can take their equity.
Equity is fine because you share, the venture, with them, and you take a risk, and that's what we are entrepreneurs, so we want to have skin in the game and share the risk, with them. That's fine, but the return on investment is going to be very in the longer term, after maybe 5-7 years. So immediately, we're not making any money. So
any successful exits so far? I know it's just been a year, but
our first startup graduated maybe 10 months ago. So no, so far nothing.
Maybe some highlights of the startups that were in the program.
We have startups who raised money. It's not public, yet, but with top investors in Silicon Valley. I would say the top 5. So I think that's a real demonstration of what we're doing. These guys, were coming from the middle of Europe, from nowhere. And I told the CEO, I said, listen, you had 2 options, or you join the refiners, or you wait, for these top tier investors to create a subsidiary in your local country. What would never happen. So we have started, raising money and doing very well. So it will come at some point, and also it's a numbers game. So of course it will come. It's a question of probability, and because we're doing pretty well our job, We know it's going to happen. But so we need to raise a bigger fund, to do more and take more equity, and also to start managing money, because right now with the first fund we don't charge any management fee because it's our money, it's a friend's money, and we never did that before. So we didn't want to charge for management fee because we were not sure that we would be able, to manage a fund. Now we know it's true, so and that we know how to do that. Yes, we raise maybe a $50 or $100 million, fund. That's the objective. We get management fees, so we get, some money. So we made our classes. That's basically what we did, and we didn't do any money, and we were not paid.
So as an investor, how do you see the market? I mean, when we talk to VCs here, they say, well, there's lots of money in Silicon Valley chasing very few deals. So is it really true? I mean, are we in sort of the bubble? Is it easy to raise, or?
No, actually, I think it's what is true is that there is a lot of money. That's true, but actually, it's harder, to raise money than it was before. And three reasons, for that, in my opinion. The first one is, at least here in Silicon Valley, investors are looking for unicorns because they have very big funds, so they need big returns. And if you sell your company, I don't know, $50 million, what is amazing, it's a lot of money, when you're a founder, $50 million. If they have 20% of stack, in your company, they're gonna make $10 million, but they have to return $1 billion, to their LPs. So it's nothing, for them. So they need bigger returns. So they're really looking for unicorns. So if you come here to Silicon Valley and you talk with investors, if you don't have something that is big, like Hollywood, it's not about making indie movies, And I'm not saying indie movies are great. I love indie movies. I only watch indie movies. But here it's about you making blockbusters. So if you don't have a scenario that is not a blockbuster, that is going to make millions of tickets and a million of entrants, it's not going to interest anybody. So that's the first reason why it's harder, because there is not a lot of unicorns projects around. The second thing is the choice. There is 30,000 startups, in Silicon Valley right now, in 50 miles away, 30,000. Okay. There is a concentration of startups, so competition is very high. And of course, it's Silicon Valley, so the best ones are here. So it's harder to raise. There is a ton of money, but the competition is super tough and super hard. So that's the second reason. And the third reason is that what I call the delirium investor, basically this period of time where it was easy to raise money, where it was basically money was growing in the trees, is over. It's over. So back to the basics. We really want. There is kind of a delirium investor right now going on in Europe and in France. I hear stuff going on there that is.
I mean, what do you mean? Is that people are just investing in anything, in any amount?
Yeah, it's basically they don't have the choice. There is too much money and not enough startups. So basically, we give money to people that don't deserve, this money. But because they need to invest, this money, how a fund works. That they have you raise your fund and you have 3 years to invest this money. Okay, 3 more years, to follow, with the right startups, and 3 years, to exit. So in fact, the investment period is pretty short, 3 years. So when you raise your fund, you have 3 years to invest this money. The problem is that if there is no startups, you have to give your money, to someone, because LPs are going to say, you're not investing the money. So you have to invest, this money. So if you're in an ecosystem where there is not enough startups, you're going to give the money to the wrong ones because you have to give this money to someone. And that's kind of something that is going on right now, I feel, in Europe, that is not going on here because the choice is here, because the numbers are here. You have 30,000 startups, so that's fine. You can find, and people know how to go quick and source, the right startup. At least, the good funds, know how to do that. And so people, and we had 2014, 2015 were very kind of a delirium where everybody was throwing money to everybody. And that's over. Right now, it's back to business and back to the business metrics.
So now on the new fund coming, it's going to be a larger fund. Are you going to still be investing those early stage startups, or are you going to maybe go to the next stage, maybe more mature companies?
No, I think we're very good at very, very early stage because we are entrepreneurs. So I think we're very good at identifying, what is an entrepreneur, and someone that won't drop, his project, that has that is passionate about what he's doing, and that is gonna go over, any bump on the road or something like that. So we're gonna continue to focus on very, very early stage. And if you're good at that, if you can really identify, these kind of startups, that's the right moment. So sometimes, you have investors that are saying, I'm not gonna invest because it's too early. I don't get that answer. Because if you're an investor, you want to get as early as possible in a startup, because that's when the price is the best. And also it's the best moment also to build a true relationship.
And valuations
and valuation, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to be very, very early stage. Now, we want to improve the way we source, startups. One thing we want to do is to bring some technology, because it's a very, very artisanal. I don't know if that's the right one in English, but very, very.
So repetitive, it's always the same pattern.
Scalable, and it's more like an art than a science. So we want to bring some technology into that. So I think that a fund should have three components. Is first of all a fund, of course. Second, a program, because you want to invest smart money. So you want to make your money smart. So having a program is making your money smart, and it
like Y Combinator.
Yes, like 500 startups and people like this. It makes the money smart because they bring knowledge, they bring network, they bring access. So it's not only money. So you want a fund, you want a program, but you want also a platform to make that scalable at large scale. Globally, be able to recruit not only where you have a personal network, like for us would be friends. No, we want to recruit startups from all over the world. We want to also have a technology that help us to identify automatically, the right startups, and not only through an application that is just like a snapshot of a startup at a very specific moment, and you don't see anything through a snapshot. I mean, that you need a kind of a video, to see how startups are going on the long term. So that's what we're thinking, what we are working on right now. What this platform, how can we use technology in our job? Now we know the job. We've been doing that for a year. We know the job. So now is how can we bring technology inside this
to maybe automate and make it
and
scalable.
Also recruit more and bring more value and also get more data. And understand better what is going on, because right now this job is very, very manual.
Yeah. So just to end, walk us through how you choose a company, a startup. What are some of the criterias that for you are
very easy?
Yeah.
Super easy.
Yeah.
No, there is 5 criteria. I used to say, the first one is a team. The second one is a team. The third one is a team. The fourth one is how your solution is different, and the fifth one is what the size of the market. So it's basically not really. I mean,
so it's 3.
Actually, it's not 3. It's really the team, because that's really what you should focus on.
But very often, especially on very early stage, I mean, the team is basically a founder, maybe a co-founder.
Yeah.
It's maybe a one person, team or 2 persons. So how do you?
Yeah, but if you don't have the right team, this very core team at the beginning, this handful number of people, if they're not right, because the thing is that, think about that. Your job is to put money, okay? So there are things that you cannot change with money. You cannot change people with money. I can give you $10 million. You're not going to change your personality. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole. I'm not going to change that with money. So that's one thing. The second thing is the problem. I can put $10 million on the table if what you're trying to do is not solving any problem. I can put all the money I want on the table. It's not going to change. And the third thing is the market. I cannot change the market. I cannot create a market, by myself with money. So when I'm saying, team, that's because you cannot really change people with money, okay? And because you cannot change, a problem, you cannot make a problem, with money, and you cannot create a market, with your money. So that's why I focus. I personally, when I meet with a startup, the first time, I don't remember who very famous investor used to say something like that he was not even listening what the entrepreneur was saying. He was just watching at him and trying to figure out, with his body language, if the guy was or the girl, was she good, doing what she was doing, and confident, or was there any empathy, in the way she communicates or whatever. So I think it's down the road. I took, for example, we invested money in startup that we believed that the problem they were trying to solve was real, and the market, but the people were not that good. And I got an example on the fleet number 3, for example. We strongly believe the same they were believing, that they were a real problem in the real market. After just 2 weeks, we understood, both of us, the startup and us, that we were wrong. But because the two guys, are so smart, they could pivot, in just 2 weeks and came up, with something totally different and super strong, and change everything and change the game, in just in an instant, and build technology very quick and get rid of what they were doing because they were smart enough, to understand that what they were doing was wrong. I used to say that the job of a CEO or the job of a founder is not to know. Nobody knows. I mean, it's very hard, to know. That's why we recruit people, to know, because we don't have the knowledge, you need. The job of a CEO is to decide to know. Is when you have all this option, all this knowledge on the table, you need to make a decision. It comes, okay, we're gonna go with option A. I don't know why, and I'm accountable. If that's the wrong option, I will be responsible, for that. So that's what you need, when you look at a team. It's not someone. Of course, you need people that bring some knowledge, but you need also in the team someone that will be decidable. That can really make the decision when you need to make a decision. And with these startups, I was super impressed because they really dig very deep, and found, the information they needed, and figure out, okay, that's not the right thing to do. Let's decide to do something else.
And you were talking about those two guys. I mean, it's a great segue. There's a very important topic here in Silicon Valley right now. It's diversity, and it's about women in tech. So tell us a little bit more about what's, if you, among your startups, among your founders, maybe are there any women? And I know on your team, there's your co-founder is a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at first, I've got 2 daughters. So I think for me, it's a very important topic because, of course, I want my daughters to live in a world that maybe I was not that sensitive before. But I think we all have to do our job and homework, or clean up maybe our mind. I think we did a lot of as a man, we did a lot of stuff wrong, on the way and it's because of our education. So I think that it's not just a job that women needs to do, but also men, and it's something we should do, all together. Things are changing, and that's great. It's amazing, because how can it be different? I mean, that sounds, so ridiculous. Now the problem is when it comes to startup. First of all, demography. I mean that there is more men than women, in this space, in the technology space. So this has to change. And to change that is to change really the culture. Because when you watch a movie, for example, the scientist is always a man, okay? And the nurse is always a girl. So we put, some stuff in our brain, and even in the brain of our kids. I remember my daughter saying she had not a good in math. And I remember her saying, yeah, but I'm not a boy. And I was like, what? Yeah, because math, are for boys. And she's 14 years old. And I said, who taught you that? It's not me, or maybe it's me, or I want to understand, why do you have this in your mind? It's not the school, I'm sure about that. I think it's all of us, actually. So this has to change. But the problem is that, and if we change that, it's going to take a lot of time. Okay, the demography is going to change. So that's the first thing. We need to change the demography numbers. The second thing is, I think that women, most of the time, and we see that with our application process, when you have, for example, 10 criteria, if you're a boy, a man, if you only qualify for 2 out of the 10, you're going to try. You're going to try because you're like, yeah, but I'm going to make it. You see, I'm going to tweak it, the way, If a woman doesn't have, at least 8 out of the 10, she doesn't apply. So I think also that's a message, so for women, please, dare. And I know it's difficult because sometimes you like, there is this feeling of imposture, like I should be, really at my top, to dare, doing something. And I think we should say, to women, listen, men are not at their top, so you're better than them. And you qualify much better, than men in most of the cases. So please, dare. And also, the third thing is that I think we should also adapt a lot of the things we're doing for women, because there is very specific situation for women. Just to give you an example, for example, we used to start our program in September. And there was, there is women that they have kids, and September is a very wrong period because they want to be present, and that's understandable, and even men should be thinking, the same. Yeah. Because it's the beginning of school, blah, 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 blah. So we also need to make some efforts to...
So did you change?
Yes, we changed. We changed the date a little bit, so we push, the date later.
So now it's the start?
It's end of September, but it's still September. But yes, and we have to make some changes also, so ourselves, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Carlos.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Till the next time.
Bye-bye.